they meet in Aso Rock. Tension over gathering permits as Edo APC picks governorship candidate today. We will enforce COVID-19 regulations on political gatherings. That's coming from the state government. Rivers APC suspends Giadom. Under Deputy Governor Ajayi finally joins PDP. The story begins on the front page and continues on page 4. The bottom strip stories now on page 10. Killings. CNG suspends regional protest. Tajuddin. Moguno sponsor highest number of bills in Green Chamber. That's on page 2. Concession of 10 federal roads to attract 163 days Fashoda, page 21. On page 3, Nigerians will pay if electricity supply stabilizes. That's coming from Moshiba Joe. And on page 21, MSMEs suffer 617 billion naira funding gap annually. That's a report. Right above the lead story now, just below the masthead. 55,000 health workers get 4.6 billion naira hazard allowance. Will protect your rights, federal government assures doctors and health workers. The story begins on the front page and continues on page 4. On page 14, federal government condemns attack on Nigerian mission in Ghana. And lastly, from the leadership is the COVID-19 update as at June 21st, 2020. Confirmed cases, 20,244. Discharged patients, 6,879, while number of deaths is at 518 NCDC. And that is all from the leadership newspaper. Let's look at the front page right now. I'll start with the story just below the masthead. It says anxiety as debt service burden stocks bankruptcy. External loans hit $33.18 billion, 91.4% of forex reserves. Currency depreciation affects capacity to service debt, says OPS. The story begins on the front page and continued on page 6. Alright, below that, under Deputy Governor's defection deepens APC crisis. Ajayi joins PDP, retains office. Akere Dolu denies stopping him from leaving government house. I was there to broker peace, says CP. Rivers APC suspends Victor Giedom. Why ruling party is in disarray? Find out on page 6. You have this picture. The first one is the scene of explosion involving 4 trucks at Bega Kara Bridge on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway yesterday. The story is on page 8. While the second picture is that of the Nigeria High Commission staff residence in Ghana, demolished by armed men yesterday. The insert picture is the building before demolition. The story is on page 3. On that same page, government okays 13.6 billion naira for doctors' insurance hazard allowance. While on page 12, first gunshots in the villa. Editorial. Page 3, CMPP threatens to occupy National Assembly over detention of CUPP spokesperson. Alright, you have the COVID-19 cases in Nigeria. Total confirmed cases 20,244. Discharged patients 6,879. And deaths 518. And that is all from the Guardian newspaper. Up next is This Day newspaper, and I'll take the stories just on the front page of the newspaper. Again, I'll start with the stories just above the masthead. Federal government response as Ghana demolishes Nigeria's diplomatic building. Attack breaches Vienna Convention. Ghana vows to punish perpetrators. The story begins on the front page and continues on page 9. With 436 new infections, Nigeria's COVID-19 cases cross 20,000 mark. Page 5. The lead story. PDP aspirants resist pressure to step down for Edo governor. Wike, Tambuwal, Okowa, Obaseki meet. Giedom didn't resign for Rivers election, says NWC member. Rivers APC suspends national chairmanship claimant. IJ deploys riot police personnel in Edo as APC holds primary today. Let's look at the picture. It's tagged, "Is Lucky Igbinedion the new godfather?" Okay. Former Governor of Edo State, Mr. Lucky Igbinedion. Edo State Deputy Governor, Mr. Philip Sharibu. Delta State Governor, Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa. And his Edo State counterpart, Mr. Godwin Obaseki, during a meeting of People's Democratic Party PDP stakeholders in Benin City yesterday. Beside the picture, Lawan calls for timeline for service chiefs over insecurity. Says President, others will address APC crisis soon. The story begins on the front page and continues on page 9. Lastly, from this day newspaper, the story is on page 5. Under Deputy Governor quits APC, joins the People Democratic Party, the PDP. That is all from this day newspaper. Let's look at the Blueprint newspaper now. Come along with me. I'll start with a leading story this time around. As resident doctors suspend strike, federal government splashes 13.6 billion naira on 55,031 health workers' insurance allowances. Says strike negates professional. NARD continues negotiations, reviews progress in 4 weeks. Awaits governor's promise in states. Page 6. The only picture is that of the Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Mohammed, Minister of Health, Ihanire, and Minister of Labor and Employment, Dr. Ngige, during the news conference. The stories below the picture now. Under Deputy Governor defects, says I won't resign. Page 16. PDP says police can't stop mass defections in APC. Don't resume if in doubt of health status, NLC tells Oyo workers. Delta SSG Commissioner COVID-19 positive. Page 5. Boko Haram kills 5 herders, rustles 480 cows. Page 7. On page 5, COVID-19 still, Africa to witness decline in diaspora remittances. That's coming from the FDC. Alright, let's look at the stories above the leading story now. I'll start with the one just below the masthead. Irregular NWC meetings caused APC crisis. PGF. Is that true? Get a Blueprint newspaper. The details is on page 6. As Buhari to reconcile warring parties, says Lawan. While on page 22, MPHCDA celebrates Nigeria's polio-free status. And lastly, on page 5, just before we go on a quick break, NAS will support sack of service chiefs if what? Okay, get the Blueprint newspaper. Lawan is speaking. And that is all from the Blueprint newspaper. Viewers, right is right if nobody is doing it. And wrong is wrong, even if everyone is doing it. We shall be back after this short break with the rest of the papers. Please stay tuned.
Not that I mean to undermine polytechnics, they do a good job, but university education is actually more valuable.
What the guy is supposed to do is to identify those people that are very, very slow in learning.
When you discover your child is not performing well in a particular subject, it's for you to encourage the child and find out ways to assist the child.
I don't give respect to the school in which you graduated from. What I see in you and I expect is what you can offer. And this is what polytechnic education equipped the graduate with.
There's no longer white-collar jobs. They are nowhere to be found. The population is increasing on a daily basis and the government cannot provide all the needed jobs for the boarding youths.
It's the doctor that the patient has to get a prescription for. The reason is that when the patient comes, the patient gets a card and is directed to see the physician.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the newspaper headlines live from the ACNN studios in Abuja. For more on our catch-up programs, please visit our social media platforms all showing on the screen. And do well to download the VM Africa app, or Prime TV, or WeTV Africa on any app store to watch us on the go. ACNNTV is now available on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Android TV. Alright, let's move on. I have the People's Daily. It's just below the masthead, and the first story says, Ondo State Deputy Governor Ajayi dumps APC for PDP. Page 2. And on page 19, resident doctors suspend nationwide strike. The leading stories on coronavirus. Federal government spends 9 billion naira on life insurance for health workers. 5 billion naira hazard allowance, PPEs, other demands met. Says strike action by resident doctors on court for. Page 5. Alright, we have this picture of a rally, a campaign that says, say no to rape and all forms of violence. Empower the youth. Chief Executive Officer, Supreme Family Entertainment International Initiative, Mrs. Joyce Andrew Mido, in black t-shirt. Executive Director of Center for Positive Health Organization, Madam Olu Sheyi Kadiri, Third Right, and other collaborating non-governmental organizations during a campaign against rape at the popular Badagry roundabout in Lagos on Sunday. The bottom strip stories now, pages 3, 2, and 7. Rape. Federal government partnering states, others on stiffer penalties. Penalties, I beg your pardon, and that is coming from Oshin Banjo. Hajj 2020. We will not compromise safety of Nigerian pilgrims. Nakon. And lastly, from the People's Daily, again, troops kill scars of Boko Haram terrorists in Borno. And that is all from the People's Daily. Let's look at the Daily Trust newspaper right now. I'll start with the lead story, and it says Buhari makes 141 appointments in 81 days. This is a different story, as highest since assumption of office. Recent actions will fast-track governance. President's new COS settling down well. Timeline of some of the appointments. Grab the Daily Trust and get the details for yourself on page 5. Bottom strip stories. Federal government pays 9 billion naira for health workers' life insurance. Page 3. Bandits kill 10 in Zamfara village. That's a sad one on page 7. 22 years after, irrigation component of Sapke Dam yet to be completed. Page 4. Alright, the stories above the lead one now. Under Deputy Governor dumps APC joins PDP. This story seemed to appear on all the dailies this morning. On Daily Trust, you found the details on page 34. While on page 6, any service chief found one thing must go, says Lawan. And lastly, federal government, multinationals parley Let's look at the Nigerian pilot now. The leading story is on board. Story is on bold red letters, and it says reprieve as resident doctors suspend nationwide strike after 8 days. Say government has begun implementation of their demands. Strike setback for fight against COVID-19, says Lahi Mohammed. It says government bent over backwards to meet their demands. All the details on page 8. Again, we see this picture of the scene of fire in which 2 tankers conveying fuel exploded along Lagos-Ibadan Expressway just yesterday. The story below the picture is on page 8. It says, under Deputy Governor joins PDP. Okay, we see the story again and again. The bottom strips stories now on pages 5, 10, 13, 25 and 10. 10 persons killed in another Zamfara attack. Police arrest 34-year-old father for killing his 2 children. Sokoto State government pledges to sustain cooperation with Air Force. NSI invests 107 million naira it earlier on. And lastly, from the Nigerian pilots, Serap sues Minister of Health and CDC over COVID-19 spending. And that is all from the Nigerian pilots. Up next is Business Day, and it happens to be the last newspaper for reading this morning, and it says global gas glut leaves Nigeria's LNG unsold, threatens 80 billion naira dividend. Beside that, tech startups risk higher interest rates on debt amid raging forex crisis. Interswitch may delay IPO indefinitely. The story begins on the front page and continues on page 31. The picture from left to right: Chief Executive, Stanbic IBTC Holdings PLC, Chairman, Stanbic IBTC Holdings PLC, and Chief Executive, Stanbic IBTC Bank PLC, at the 8th Annual General Meeting of Stanbic IBTC Holdings PLC. Inside Stories is on page 2, I beg your pardon, page 30. Okay, it's on page 30 this morning. It says Dangote Cement sustains 54,000 jobs in 4 African countries. And lastly, from the Business Day, manufacturers suffer drop in profits as COVID-19 underpins bleak outlook. That is all from the Business Day newspaper. Viewers, it's at this point we draw the curtains on the program this morning. And as usual, our theme for this week is the peace of God. And I encourage you to stay connected to the Prince of Peace as you go about your daily activities. Make it a date with us on Wednesday for another fresh edition. I am Phoebe Agimayo. Bye-bye.